I really don't know what's going on with my hair. It is a hot mess. Minus the hot.
And now for my next number, I'd like to return to the
classic. Time.
What's up, everybody? Alex back again with the next installment to my top 100 albums series I'm doing on the channel. We're doing 60 through to 51 today. So I'm looking forward to this because there's some really classic albums in here, as well as some stuff that maybe not expecting or maybe expecting to be a bit higher up on the list. Anyway, like I said, it's my opinion. If you think there's an album on this list that should be higher, or should be lower on the list, or shouldn't be on the list at all, that's your opinion. Don't forget, I'm taking this, what I'm doing for this list is taking into consideration the albums that have had an impact on my musical taste over the years and how it's had an influence on it. So obviously the albums that are higher up on the list have had a much bigger influence on my overall music taste, and the albums that are lower down have still had somewhat of an influence, but maybe necessarily haven't had a huge influence at all. So with that said, let's get into the video, because we're a minute 30 in and I still ain't showing you any records. So coming in at 60, Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. This album is incredible. It's one of my favorites from Marvin. It's definitely up there for what it is. Love Let's Get It On. If I Should Die Tonight, Keeping It On. Distant Lover is a great track on this album. Just an incredible album from start to finish, and I'm sure we all know this album. It's Marvin Gaye. Whether you like him or not, I think he is an absolutely incredible musician, and of course quite an early influence. It's just because this is the first Marvin album I heard. It's not my favorite from him, but it's still up there. Like I said, it's just not my favorite, which is why it's not high up on the list, but still pretty high considering it's 60 and this is my top 100. Many albums obviously didn't make this list. This album did, so I'm very, very happy with this and where I've put this on my list. And yeah, of course, you guys know Tamla Motown, one of my favourite labels. I did a video on my favourite labels, so yeah, Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On comes in at 60. At number 59, this one people might not have expected, but it's AC/DC's For Those About to Rock We Salute You. It's not the AC/DC album I know most people would pick, but it is the first one I heard from them all the way through, and the album that made me a fan of, like a bigger fan of theirs than I already was. Great stuff on here, and yeah, just incredible. Obviously, you've got For Those About to Rock We Salute You, Evil Walk, Spellbound, Inject the Venom, Breaking the Rules, Night of the Long Knives, the closing track on this album. Fantastic album in my opinion. Definitely my top 5 AC/DC albums when it comes to being the best ones for me. But yeah, definitely one of my personal favourites. Gotta give props to AC/DC's For Those About to Rock We Salute You. Incredible album. Like I said, the first one I heard from them, so it's not that high up because I don't listen to a lot of AC/DC anymore, and I don't listen to a whole lot of classic rock, but this is definitely one of my go-tos when I'm in the mood for some classic rock, or just in the mood for AC/DC. This is always the one I tend to pull the most. So yeah, AC/DC's For Those About to Rock We Salute You is at 79. At number 78 is an album that I know people are going to know, and I think this is the only album from this band on this list. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Queen's News of the World comes in at number 78. Of course, the famous artwork with the famous Family Guy connection. If you know the connection, then props to you. But yeah, you've obviously got songs like We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Sheer Heart Attack, Spread Your Wings, Get Down, Make Love, My Melancholy Blues. I just love everything on this album, really. So, and again, first album I listened to Queen all the way through, first album I intended on listening to all the way through, and easily my favourite because of We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. But definitely a classic from them. Great artwork. Queen always have great artwork in my opinion though, except for maybe 1 or 2 albums here and there, but that's a bit different for another time. But yeah, Queen's News of the World, and one I grew up listening to because my mum was a massive fan of Queen, but she had the Greatest Hits Volume 2, so I played that more often than this growing up. But album-wise, this was always my favourite. I always loved the songs on this one. So Queen's News of the World comes in at number 58. At number 57, we have the first soul album of the video. Won't be the only one, but it's the first one. It's Earth, Wind & Fire's I Am. This is the only... I'm just going to put it out there. This is the only Earth, Wind & Fire album you will see on this list. It's the only one I tend to go to. This and Greatest Hits are the only two I really go to on a regular basis. But this album kind of switched me on to Earth, Wind & Fire a bit more, because I really love the album tracks on this album. I'm not a huge fan of the song Boogie Wonderland or After the Love Is Gone, but I really love the song In the Stone, and I really love the song Star. In the Stone obviously opens this album. Fantastic stuff here, just incredible. And I've always been fascinated by the artwork from Earth, Wind & Fire's albums, because they always sort of tell a story through time with their artwork, and as their sound has evolved, so have their album covers, which I think was always a very influential one. And here you've got, I always examine the covers, you've got like the slavery in the bottom, and it's just a fantastic album cover, as well as a fantastic album. You know, Earth, Wind & Fire's I Am has just one of my favourite album covers ever, and definitely an album that I tend to go to a lot, and again, just for In the Stone, so had to throw that in there. Not my favourite group, I'll admit. I'm not a huge fan of Earth, Wind & Fire outside of like some of their hits. Obviously September and Let's Dance. No, not Let's Dance. Is it Let's Dance? I think it is. No, Let's Groove. Let's Groove is the song I'm thinking of. But yeah, Earth, Wind & Fire's I Am comes in at number 57. At 56 we have a modern album here, Maroon 5, Overexposed. I remember when this came out, and the singles off here were everywhere. You know, you had songs One More Night, Payphone, and Daylight, all of which were massive singles off this album. And the cover always intrigued me as well. But this is the album that kind of reconnected with me with Maroon 5, because they had a really good first album with songs about Jane, and then their album after that I kind of fell out of them, and I wasn't really listening to them in their third album for their third album. But this album came around, their fourth album, and it really heavily reconnected me with the band, and now they are one of my favorite bands, and every time they put a new album out, I'm like, yes, or they put a new song out, and I'm like, yes. So yeah, Maroon 5's Overexposed, potentially my favourite from them, and again, because of the cover, always reminded me of some of my favourite animes. I don't know why, it just does. It's not an anime, your typical anime style, but it just reminds me of it. And the back half, of course, you've got the band there. But Maroon 5's Overexposed, great album from them, like I said, it's just an album that deserves every little listen because it's just that damn good. So yeah, Maroon. It might not be a popular one. It might not be a band that some of you may not listen to necessarily, but for me, Maroon 5, they've had such a huge impact on me. And of course, one of the reasons I still listen to what's called mainstream music or music that's still in the charts because of Maroon, a band called Maroon 5. So yeah, Maroon 5's Overexposed comes in at number 50. What's that? 6? Yeah, 56. 55, and we have another soul album here. This is Glenn Jones, Finesse. One that may not be as popular, some of you may not know it, it's actually 80s R&B. But the big songs on here are, of course, the title track, Finesse, and the song Meet Me Halfway There. They're the two massive songs off this album. Both pretty incredible. And yeah, this album is spectacular. It's not the album that brought him into mainstream. Actually, his mini album that came out before this that was massive. Had his massive hit "I Am Somebody" on it. But this album I actually prefer just because I think I personally think it's better overall. You've got production from Kashif on this album, which if you are a regular viewer of mine, you will know Kashif is one of my favourite artists ever. Try and collect everything with his name on it. Yeah, Glenn Jones obviously does lead and backing vocals. Obviously lead on all the tracks, but backing vocals on a couple of them. Freddie Jackson features on one of the tracks on backing vocals. Just an overall great album, and I think one that definitely deserves more recognition. One that's, I think, definitely very, very underrated, and an album that is well worth every little listen. So yeah, Glenn Jones's Finesse comes in at number 55. And of course it wouldn't be my channel if I didn't show some 80s R&B. So hey, what can you do? Number 54. Another one that maybe necessarily isn't in everyone's books or on everyone's radars, or one that everyone might potentially go to, but for me this is one that had a huge influence. And for me, the reason I listen to a lot more African based music than I used to, or what's called Afrobeat or High Life, is Fela Kuti and the Afrika 70 with Zombie. Yeah, it's 2 tracks. Yeah, those 2 tracks are about 12 minutes apiece. Great album from them, absolutely incredible. Originally from 1976, this is of course a reissue from 2014, but I don't mind that because I'm never going to see originals of Fela Kuti stuff, and I know that. So yeah, Fela Kuti's Zombie, such a massive influence on me in particular, because I didn't really listen to Afrobeat before I listened to this, and now that I've listened to this and I hear the jazz influence, I hear the funk influences in there, the soul influences, so many influences from genres I love. Afrobeat's like sort of a nice way to have a mishmash of everything, and so this album in particular, yeah, it was the first one I heard, maybe not definitely my favourite from Fela Kuti, and I wish I had more of his stuff, but like I said, you just don't see his stuff around. But yeah, I had to pick this up. This is absolutely incredible, and just an album that deserves every bit of recognition I can give it, because it's just that incredible. And then the back cover as well. Look at that artwork. I mean, that's like a little comic book strip there. But yeah, the song itself, Zombie, was basically written as a massive FU to the African president. You know, if you listen to the words, it talks about the slavery and everything, and it's just incredible. So how can I not include an album like this in my top 100? It's so influential and so good. Even if you're not into Afrobeat, even if you're not into jazz, or you don't like funk, or I definitely would say give this album a listen, and definitely listen very carefully to the words, because you'll hear how good it is and how influential Fela was as a person. Just incredible. So good. Zombie by Fela Kuti comes in at 74. Number 73, an album that maybe people are expecting to be higher on the list, but I'll explain. I'll show you the album and then I'll explain. It's the 1975 by the 1975. Now, some of you may not expect this to be on here at all because I've slated them in the past. I know publicly I've slated them, and I wasn't really a fan of them until I'd say a couple of years ago when they put out their album A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. They put that album out and I was pretty much converted into a full-time fan. I did like the odd song here and there, but outside of like one or two songs I wasn't really a fan. And then my old boss at the record store that I used to work at, he was a huge fan, so he kind of played them a lot, try and convert me, and well, eventually I did become a fan, but that's the reason they're not as high on the list, because I wasn't a fan till later. But this is my favourite album from them, from front to back. You've got the singles on here: Chocolate, Girls, She Way Out, and Settle Down. Robbers is another great track. Money is a great track on here. Menswear is a fantastic song. Just a stellar album from front to back. Like I said, my favourite from them. So I had to get the white vinyl edition of the album. And yeah, they're the lead singer Matt Healy was originally in a punk band, so you can kind of tell that from his voice anyway. And yeah, it's a pretty incredible album anyway. But that's kind of rocky, sort of indie rock, dream pop mashup. Very, very good. You never really know what their style is because they're constantly adapting it and constantly changing it. It's just that good. But yeah, the 1975 by the 1975 comes in at number 53. 52 is a reggae album. I know not everyone's a fan of reggae, but when it comes to Bob Marley and the Wailers, Kaya is my pick for, well, being a go-to from him. Obviously you've got Easy Skanking, the title song Kaya, Sun is Shining, Is This Love, the massive hit on here, Satisfy My Soul's another big one, Misty Morning, Time Will Tell. Just everything on here is pretty impeccable, and just absolutely great album. Kind of the album that made me a fan of Bob in the first place, but there is probably potentially another album that could top this one for me. But again, Kaya is the album that I always recommend to people. It's like, oh, you not got Kaya? There you go. But yeah, this album, just for sentimental reasons, I will always grab this. I will always play it. Yeah, Kaya by Bob Marley, fantastic stuff. And yeah, that's the album that made me a fan of reggae. I was a fan of Bob Marley before because I had Legend, but what made me a real fan of reggae was this album. So props to Bob Marley's Kaya, which comes in at 52. Okay, and we are almost done with this part of the video, or this part of the series. There is just one more I have to go through, and I will say now it is an 80s R&B album. So again, if you're not a fan of that genre, this album won't be for you. But at 51 is Sands of Time by S.O.S Band. Now, the only reason, right, that this tops the last S.O.S Band album I showed on my list is because it has my favourite S.O.S Band song on it, which is The Finest. That song, the single, The Finest, is my favourite S.O.S Band song. It's also got Borrowed Love, which is a single on here. The title track's brilliant. Even when every song on here is brilliant. But it's on that Taboo label again, which is pretty famous, I'd say, for like pop culture, 80s R&B. But yeah, this album is just incredible. Definitely one that I was buzzing when I found it, because I was just like, oh, they've got it, yes. There it is. How can you not like that cover? I mean, really. Let's not get it twisted here. Fantastic stuff from S.O.S band. There's not a lot I can really say about this album. It is my favourite from them. It's not too high on the list because again, it didn't have a huge influence on me. It's just one I listen to a lot because of the songs I like on it. What else can I say really, other than 80s R&B? Definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of 80s R&B and you want something new and you don't know this album. This is one I can recommend. Any S.O.S band's albums really, but this one, for me in particular, is the one I tend to go to the most. So yeah, S.O.S band, Sands of Time, comes in at 51. Okay, well, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, give this video a massive thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already, and yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. Make sure the bell is turned on as well. That way you never miss an upload. I may miss a day here or there, but typically Wednesdays and Sundays are my upload days. Typically, but like I said, I may miss a day here and there. But with that all said and done, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you again very soon. Peace.